Biological inheritance is clear-cut, but as we move back through generations, that clarity becomes the paper trail of archival history. When researcher Roger Alvarez III began auditing his own family tree, he found the record crowded with historical ghosts, men with identical names, born in the same decades, whose lives frequently overlap and tangle the lineage. To isolate the real individuals from this historical noise, he turned to the Genealogical Proof Standard. This is a rigorous forensic audit that requires a thorough search of all records and the resolution of every conflicting piece in evidence. Following this investigative path through the Coffell and McMahon lines revealed a trajectory that, a century earlier, would have been difficult to imagine. The Coffells were English Anglicans from the rural parishes of Yorkshire. Their lives were governed entirely by the local Church of England parish system. Across the Irish Sea, the McMahons were Gaelic-Catholics from Ulster. They lived within a completely different cultural and religious framework. For centuries, these two groups existed in a state of deep political and religious friction. In the Old World, an English Anglican and an Ulster Catholic lived on opposite sides of a social divide that was rarely crossed. Their separate histories dictated that their paths should never intersect. Yet the archive shows these two lines moving toward a single destination. In 1818, Philip Coffell left the shrinking economic opportunities of post-war Yorkshire. He emigrated to Upper Canada, drawn by the British government's promise of free land for loyal settlers. This 1818 land petition marks his arrival. He secured Lot 170 in the Talbot settlement, 200 acres of raw land overlooking the north shore of Lake Erie. 1830 store ledgers show the exchange required to hold that land. Philip sold hogs, wheat, and butter to pay for frontier survival tools. His account shows purchases for new axes, heavy trace chains for clearing timber, and spirits, used as both disinfectant and medicine. By 1844, his signature appears on this legal indenture for another 100 acres. It records a payment of £100, proof of his transition from a landless emigrant to a successful yeoman farmer. These documents anchor the Coffell family to North American soil. They had successfully established a new material identity, thousands of miles from the Yorkshire village. While the Coffells were clearing land in Ontario, the McMahon line was beginning its own crossing. They moved from Ulster to the ports of New York City, part of a massive Irish Catholic labor force. They followed a major migration corridor, up the Hudson River to Albany, then west along the Erie Canal toward the Great Lakes. By the late 1800s, the McMahons pushed into Ontario, their trajectory eventually mirroring the Coffells' parallel movement toward Michigan. The draw was the booming Midwestern economy. They were moving toward the timber and the new agricultural lands opening up in the Saginaw Bay region. The economic landscape of the frontier acted as a funnel, pulling these two historically separate families toward a single county in mid-Michigan. They converged in Gladwin County during the peak of the lumber boom. This was a raw environment where the landscape was being rapidly transformed by industrial-scale logging. The sheer physical demands of the timber camps dictated a new social order. Working these massive white pines required crews to operate as a single unit, regardless of where they were born. Using a crosscut saw like this required two men to move in a perfectly synchronized rhythm. In this environment, the immediate mechanical need for cooperation forced men from different backgrounds into a shared labor that their ancestors in Yorkshire or Ulster would never have experienced. In the work camps and homesteads of Gladwin County, the pressure of survival prioritized a man's ability to work over his religious or political heritage. This transition culminated in the early 20th century with Juanita Bell Coffell and James Arthur McMahon. The marriage record between them shows the two surnames appearing together on the same page. It is a document that records the formal intersection of their separate lineages. This union brought the Anglican farmer and the Catholic laborer into the same household, merging two formerly distinct histories. The result was a new lineage, one that was no longer defined by the old frictions of the British Isles, but by the shared labor of the American frontier. The archival trail began in a quiet Yorkshire parish and a northern Irish townland, but it ended here, in the Michigan woods, where the record shows a family finally